a nutshell. Earlier I spoke to the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Bim Afolami. I did start by talking about the debates. Thank you so much for being on the programme this evening. So Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer both agreeing to take part in Sky's Leaders event in Grimsby next week. You looking forward to watching?
Well, frankly, after the Prime Minister's performance last night against the poor performance of Keir Starmer, I'm very much looking forward to it. And, I think it'll be a good spectacle and a good event.
How important do you think it is for both leaders to, I guess, put themselves forward for interviews, debates and stuff going forward when people are trying to work out how they should be voting?
Look, of course it's important because this is a big decision, and having been out on the doors in my own constituency in Hitchin and elsewhere, I know that people are still, there are a lot of undecided people. They say, I haven't had a chance to figure out everything yet. I haven't had a chance to see things. Obviously, the manifestos are still to come, and that's part of it. But it's important that both leaders get to interrogate each other's plans as well. And so there are lots of different ways in which this should work. But what I think is wrong is that some people say, oh, these debates don't matter, they're just too shouty, nobody's influenced by them. That is not my experience at all. There are a lot of people in this country who still do not know how they're going to vote, and they are looking very carefully at these debates.
Now, let's talk about one of the things that have come out of yesterday's event, shall we? Because you're obviously hammering this line that a Labour government would put up taxes by £2,000 per household. Now, Nick Davis at the Institute for Government has tweeted today to say a chunk of the £2,000 tax rise Sunak claimed Labour would be implementing is based on my work, he said. And he then went on to describe that claim as nonsense. We know, of course, the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury, James Bowler, has also pushed back to say that it shouldn't just be presented as being costed and produced by the Treasury as well. I mean, is this claim a lie?
No, it's not, and I want to be incredibly clear about this. Of the 27 costings that were included, 21 of them were done by independent civil servants, costing Labour's policies. 3 of them were done by other government departments through responses to written questions and the like, and 2 of them came from the Labour Party themselves. And, this is really sad to see the Labour Party just trying to distract people from what is...
It's not just the Labour Party, is it? This is Nick Davis of the Institute for Government. Well, he says his work has been used by you guys, by the Conservatives, and he says it in a way that is nonsense.
Well, as I said, the vast majority of this was costed by independent civil servants. You mentioned James Bowler, the Treasury Permanent Secretary, who, by the way, having worked with him, I have immense respect for. What all the Permanent Secretary was saying is that the overall £2,000 number, or just over £2,000 number, was not produced by civil servants. The Prime Minister never said that. What we said is that when you bear in mind all of these reasonable costings, most of which were done by independent civil servants, once you bear those costings in mind, with reasonable assumptions, and using the Labour Party's own figures as well, it's over £2,000 per working family. But that is what we're saying.
The Institute for Government is saying that it's nonsense, and their workings are part of what this figure has come from.
Well, as I said, it's a small part of those work. As I said, 21 of these 27 were done by independent civil servants. So, look, we can nitpick around all of this.
I mean, are civil servants independent? Some people would say that they're not independent, they're working for the government. Well,
they're making independent judgments that they are willing to stand behind, indeed are published on the Treasury's own website.
The Treasury have pushed back to say that they're not willing to stand by this document.
No, what the Perm Secretary has said, rightly, is that no civil servant came up with a £2,000 figure. Of course, that was the Conservative Party analysis, but we drew upon independent analysis. Okay. Also, I must say, there was one of the costings that was done by an independent investment bank. So one of them was done like that. But look, that all of this effort by Labour today to try and rubbish these claims, when Keir Starmer was given the opportunity repeatedly in the debate yesterday, Keir Starmer couldn't say how he was going to fund all of these policies.
We'll talk about this later, but you're saying that a Labour government would put up taxes by £2,000 per household. How much has tax gone up under the Conservatives over the last parliamentary term per household?
Well, it's difficult to calculate because, of course, it's a blended. You have to think.
I'll give you the answer. Since 2019, according to our economics and data editor Ed Conway, and analysing OBR figures, taxes has gone up £13,000 per household since 2019. And £2,000 sounds like a bit of a bargain in comparison, doesn't it?
Well, what I know is that if you look at the real disposable income, i.e. the amount of money people have at the end of the week, at the end of the month...
No, we're talking about tax. You're talking about how much tax would go up under Labour. This is really important. I'm not talking about disposable income, I'm talking about tax. This is what you want to base this election on, right? This is why you're talking about Labour's tax plans. Tax went up £13,000 per household and over the last parliamentary term under the Conservatives.
No, I'm afraid I don't recognise that number, frankly, because I've never seen that calculation. What I know is that the real disposable income, the amount of money that actually somebody's left with, which is really the key thing if you're talking about the finances of my household, yours or anybody else's, at the end of the week, the end of the month, is higher, if you compare it, for example, to 2010, over £1,000 higher. That's after inflation, after costs, after the war in Ukraine, after COVID, over £1,000 higher now than it was in 2010. I do not recognise the 13,000 number that you've said.
OK, now, there is a kind of wider point that I want to make here as well. You know, saying that Labour aren't being honest with people about their plans after the election, I feel like, to be completely honest, that claim could be levelled at basically all parties, because at the minute we're spending more in debt interest than education. Public spending projections have been described by some economists as a fantasy after the election. And then we've also got a situation where tax is due to hit a historic high. I mean, it feels to me like no one's being straight about the really difficult choices that are facing people and facing the government after the election.
I don't think that's fair, but let me describe why. You mentioned debt interest. Yes, debt interest is too high, and we want to get it down. That's why we've worked so hard to bring down inflation, which is one of the reasons why debt interest costs were high in the first place. That's why it's so important that inflation is now back at just about target level. You mentioned, spending plans in the next Parliament. At the budget, we set out very robust spending plans that are checked by the Office of Budget Responsibility that showed that there was a 1% above inflation increase in public spending. Now, it's a political judgment whether somebody says, well, you should put it up by more than 1%. We've said we can put it up by 1%, increase that, and not borrow more, and not tax more. Labour have refused to do that. So, look, I'm not saying the choices are easy, and I'm not saying that there can't be things happening that in the next Parliament that you can't anticipate now, but it's due on all parties, particularly if you're Labour Party, who are challenging to become, Keir Starmer challenging to become Prime Minister, it is incumbent upon him to be honest about what his plans are. When I knock on doors, so many people say Labour are not honest about what they're planning. And yesterday, when he was given the chance in a debate, repeatedly, by Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer couldn't say so. And all that's happened is today, Labour are panicking because they know how poor the performance was of their leader.
The latest Sky News YouGov poll has put Reform UK within 2 points of the Conservative Party. 2 points. Nigel Farage tweeted to say, we're just getting started. How worried are you about reform?
Honestly, I'm not particularly worried.
You're not worried
about reform.
at all?
No, shall I tell you why?
Yeah.
I'm not worried about reform because they don't have a plan for reforming anything.
Yeah, but you might not agree with them, but an awful lot of people are saying that they're going to vote for reform.
Hold on, I didn't say it was about agreeing or disagreeing. I'm saying that they don't have a plan for anything. Yes, it's easy to shout from the sidelines if you're Nigel Farage or anybody else, to shout and say all of the parties, all of the established parties, they're rubbish. It's easy to do that. They haven't put out a plan for anything. Frankly, at least in the days of UKIP, they actually had a policy. These guys don't even have a policy. And so I am confident, I have a lot of faith in the British people that anybody who's even considering voting reform when it comes to the general election, once they actually take a look at it, they are not going to vote for a party that has no plan, no future, and absolutely no vision for the future of this country. That's what we have in the Conservative Party.
OK, thank you very much indeed.